The Sterling Club was the kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 months' notice and a member referral. Crystal chandeliers, leather booths, waiters in white gloves, and a wine list thicker than most novels. My parents loved it here. It screamed old money, prestige, exclusivity, everything they valued. Tonight was their 30th wedding anniversary. Just family. Me, my sister Vanessa, and our parents. Intimate and elegant, exactly how Mom wanted it. I arrived exactly on time, 7 p.m. Vanessa was already there, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her engagement ring catching the light every time she moved her hand. He did that a lot. The hand thing. Making sure everyone saw the 3-carat diamond her fiancé Brandon had given her. "Harper," she said when she saw me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It actually came. I thought you'd be too busy with your little projects." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, sliding into the booth. Mom and Dad arrived moments later, both dressed impeccably. Dad in a tailored suit, Mom in pearls and silk. They looked like they'd stepped out of a country club catalog. "Happy anniversary," I said, standing to hug them. "Thank you, darling," Mom said, but her eyes were already scanning my outfit. Simple black dress, minimal jewelry, no designer labels. I could see the disappointment flicker across her face. "You look comfortable." Translation: "You look poor." We ordered drinks. Champagne for everyone except me. I ordered water. Vanessa noticed immediately. "Not drinking, Harper? Trying to save money?" She laughed like it was a joke, but there was an edge to it. "Just prefer to stay clear-headed," I said. "Of course. You always were the serious one." "No fun." Vanessa sipped her champagne. "Brandon and I just got back from the Maldives. 2 weeks at a private resort. It was absolutely divine." "Have you ever been to the Maldives, Harper?" "No." "Oh. Well, you should go sometime. When you can afford it." Another laugh. Another reminder. Dad cleared his throat. "So, Vanessa tells us the wedding planning is going well. June wedding at the Botanical Gardens, correct?" "Yes, Daddy. It's going to be perfect. Brandon's parents are flying in their friends from Europe. We're expecting about 300 guests." Vanessa turned to me. "You're still coming, right, Harper? I know it might be hard for you to take time off work, but family is important." "I'll be there," I said quietly. The appetizers arrived. Oysters, caviar, imported cheese. Dad ordered a $400 bottle of wine. The conversation flowed around me. Vanessa's wedding, Brandon's promotion, the vacation home Dad was considering buying in Aspen. "Harper, you've been quiet," Mom said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "How's work?" "It's good," I said. "Still doing that tech thing?" Dad asked vaguely. "Software development, yes." He didn't sound interested. "Well, it's good you have a steady job." "Not glamorous, but steady." Vanessa jumped in. "Brandon's company just landed a huge contract with a pharmaceutical company. He's being fast-tracked to partner. At 32. Can you imagine?" "That's wonderful," Mom beamed. "What about you, Harper?" Vanessa asked with mock curiosity. "Any big promotions? Raises? Or are you still just coding?" "Still coding," I confirmed. "Well, someone has to do it, I suppose." Vanessa exchanged a look with Mom that I wasn't supposed to see but did. The main course arrived. Wagyu beef, lobster tail, truffle risotto. The kind of meal that cost more than some people's weekly grocery budget. I ate slowly, savoring the food while half listening to Vanessa dominate the conversation with wedding details, honeymoon plans, and the house she and Brandon were building in the suburbs. Then came dessert. Crème brûlée, chocolate soufflé, a cheese plate. And with dessert came the announcement I hadn't been expecting. Dad set down his wine glass and cleared his throat. "Your mother and I wanted to talk to you both about something important tonight." Vanessa perked up. I stayed quiet. "As you know, we set up trust funds for both of you when you were born," Dad continued. "Harper, yours was set to mature when you turned 25. That was 6 years ago." "I remember," I said. "You cashed it out almost immediately. $1.2 million, gone in a matter of months." Dad's tone was disapproving. "We were disappointed, Harper. That money was supposed to be your foundation, your security. We don't know what you spent it on, but it's gone now." I said nothing. "Vanessa, however, has been more responsible," Mom added, smiling at my sister. "She's kept her trust fund intact, invested it wisely and demonstrated real financial maturity. Vanessa preened. So we've made a decision, Dad announced. We're restructuring the trusts. Vanessa, yours will remain as planned. But Harper, we're reallocating your remaining inheritance to your sister. She's proven she can handle it. She's achieved something. She's getting married, building a life, doing things the right way. The table went silent. Vanessa's smirk was barely concealed. Mom nodded approvingly. Dad watched me, waiting for a reaction. We're giving your trust fund to your sister, Dad said again, slower this time, like I hadn't understood. She actually achieved something. Well, you had your chance. I set down my fork carefully, took a sip of water, and smiled. Hey, I said. Dad blinked. Okay, that's all you have to say. What would you like me to say? I thought you'd be upset, Mom said, looking almost disappointed that I wasn't crying or begging. Why would I be upset about money that doesn't exist anymore? I asked calmly. Because it was yours, Vanessa said, unable to hide her satisfaction. And now it's mine. Because I'm responsible and you're not. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen toward them. I'm not upset because this is my actual bank account. 3 faces leaned in to look. The number on the screen, $67,349,284.33. Mom gasped audibly. That's 67 million? Give or take a few $100,000, I said. It fluctuates daily based on market performance. Dad grabbed the phone from my hand, staring at the screen like it might be a trick. This can't be real. This is fake. You edited this somehow. It's real, I said. The trust fund you're talking about? The $1.2 million I cashed out at 18? I invested it. Started a software company. Sold it 4 years later for $8.3 million. Then I started another company. Sold that one for $23 million. Then I started a third company which I still own. It's currently valued at $94 million and I hold 62% of the shares. The table was completely silent. Vanessa's face had gone white. You're lying. Am I? I took my phone back and opened my investment portfolio. Here's my stock holdings. Here's my real estate portfolio. I own 4 commercial properties and 6 residential. Here's my business valuation from last quarter. Would you like to see my tax returns? I paid $8.2 million in taxes last year. Why didn't you tell us? Mom whispered, her hand at her throat. I tried, I said simply. Multiple times. 4 years ago when I sold my first company, I invited you to dinner to celebrate. Dad, you said you were busy with a golf tournament. Mom, you said you had a charity luncheon. Vanessa, you said you had plans with Brandon. That's not, Vanessa started. 3 years ago when I started my second company, I invited you to the launch party. None of you came. Dad said it was nice that I had a hobby. Mom asked when I was going to get a real job. Vanessa told her friends I worked in IT support. Dad's face was red now. You should have insisted. Made us listen. I did, I said calmly. I sent you all quarterly updates about my companies. Financial reports. Growth projections. None of you ever responded. Not once. So I stopped trying. This is insane, Vanessa said, her voice rising. If you're so rich, why do you dress like that? Why do you live in that tiny apartment? Why don't you have a nice car? I dress comfortably because I work from home most days. I live in a 1,200 square foot apartment because I don't need more space and it's in a great location. I drive a hybrid because it's fuel efficient and reliable. I paused. I don't need to perform wealth, Vanessa. I actually have it. Mom was crying now, mascara starting to run. Harper, honey, we didn't know. You have to understand, we had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked, I said. Every conversation was about Vanessa's accomplishments. Vanessa's wedding. Vanessa's life. I was just the other daughter. The disappointing one who cashed out her trust fund and probably wasted it on something frivolous. What did you want us to think? Dad demanded. You took $1.2 million and disappeared with it. I invested it, I said firmly. And I tripled it within 6 years. Then I turned that into tens of millions. I built 3 successful companies. I employ 87 people. I pay their healthcare, their retirement, their salaries. I've created something real and sustainable. But none of that mattered to you because I didn't do it the way you expected. Vanessa found her voice again, sharp and defensive. So what, you're just going to sit there and make us feel bad? Rub your money in our faces. No, I said. I'm going to tell you something you need to hear. That trust fund you're giving to Vanessa? The one you think I wasted? I stopped caring about it the moment I realized I could build something bigger on my own. I don't need your money. I never did. I just needed you to see me. We do see you, Mom said desperately. No, you don't. You see what I'm showing you right now because it's undeniable. But you've never seen me. You've never asked about my work, my goals, my life. You decided I was the unsuccessful daughter and never questioned it. Dad leaned back in the booth looking 10 years older suddenly. I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, Dad. You made your decision. Give Vanessa my trust fund. He's welcome to it. I have everything I need. I picked up my water glass. But there's something else you should know. They all stared at me. That trust fund you're reallocating? The one still in the family accounts. I've been managing your entire investment portfolio for the last 3 years. Mom's eyes went wide. What? Remember when you said your financial advisor retired and the firm assigned you a new one? That was me. Well, my company. Baker Financial Management. I bought the firm 2 years ago specifically because they managed your accounts. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of. You've been managing our money? Dad's voice was hoarse. Yes. Your retirement accounts, your investments, everything. The returns you've seen over the last 3 years? That was my strategy. Your portfolio value has increased by 47% since I took over. You're about to retire very comfortably because of investments I made on your behalf. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. Why would you do that? Because regardless of how you see me, you're still my family, I said. I wanted to make sure you were secure. That Mom and Dad could retire without worry. That their money worked for them. Harper. Mom reached for my hand but I pulled back gently. I need you to understand something, I said. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your validation. I built my success without your support and I'll continue to build it regardless of whether you ever acknowledge it. But I wanted you to know on your anniversary that the daughter you dismissed has been taking care of you this whole time. I stood up, pulling my coat from the back of the booth. Where are you going? Dad asked. Home. I have a board meeting in the morning. We're finalizing a merger that's going to expand my company into 3 new markets. I placed my napkin on the table. Dinner was lovely. Happy anniversary. Harper, please, Mom begged. We need to talk about this. We need to. No, we don't, I said gently. You made it very clear tonight where I stand in this family. You were prepared to give away my inheritance without even talking to me about it first. You announced it like it was a done deal, like I had no say, like I didn't matter. That tells me everything I need to know. We made a mistake, Dad said, standing up. A terrible mistake. Please sit back down. Let's talk. We've been talking for 31 years, Dad. You just haven't been listening. I picked up my phone. For what it's worth, Vanessa, congratulations on your wedding. I hope you and Brandon are very happy together. And enjoy the trust fund. Consider it a wedding gift. I don't want it now, Vanessa said quietly, tears streaming down her face. Not like this. Too late, I said. You were perfectly happy to take it 5 minutes ago when you thought I was broke. Nothing's changed except what you know about me. And that says everything. I walked toward the exit of the Sterling Club. Behind me, I heard Mom crying, Dad calling my name, Vanessa saying something I couldn't quite hear. But I didn't turn around. The valet brought my car around. My unremarkable hybrid that was paid off and perfectly functional. I got in and drove home to my tiny apartment with the view of the harbor and the home office where I'd built a multi-million-dollar empire. My phone started ringing before I even pulled out of the parking lot. Mom, please come back. We can fix this. Dad, I looked up your company. Harper, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Vanessa, I feel sick. I don't want the trust fund. I don't want any of it. And one text from Brandon, Vanessa's fiancé, who'd apparently been briefed. Holy shit, you're that Harper Baker? The tech entrepreneur? Vanessa never told me. What the hell? I turned my phone to silent and drove home. When I got to my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still at the Sterling Club, trying to process what had just happened. Trying to reconcile the daughter they'd dismissed with the woman who'd been quietly succeeding beyond their wildest expectations. My phone buzzed with a call. Not my family this time. My CFO. Harper, the Morgan deal just closed. We're officially expanding to the West Coast. Congratulations, boss. Thanks, David. Good work. Are you okay? You sound off. Family dinner, I said. Say no more. He paused. For what it's worth, you've built something incredible here. Don't let anyone make you forget that. I won't, I promised. After I hung up, I looked at the messages flooding my phone. 23 from Mom. 15 from Dad. 37 from Vanessa. All of them desperate. All of them apologetic. All of them suddenly seeing me for the first time. But here's the thing about finally being seen. Sometimes it comes too late. Sometimes people only value you when they realize what you're worth. And that's not love. That's not respect. That's just recognition of utility. I'd spent 31 years trying to earn their approval. Trying to prove I was enough. And I'd done it. I'd exceeded every possible measure of success. Built companies. Made millions. Created jobs. Managed their investments. Taken care of them even when they couldn't be bothered to take care of me. And the moment they found out. The moment they realized I wasn't the failure they'd believed I was, they wanted back in. But I was done performing. Done proving. Done shrinking myself to fit their expectations. I opened my laptop and looked at the investor reports for my company. Growth projections showing another 40% increase next year. 3 acquisition offers we were considering. A product launch that would revolutionize our industry. This was real. This was mine. And this was enough. I didn't need a trust fund. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them to see me. Because I'd finally learned to see myself. And what I saw was worth $67 million and climbing. The trust fund they'd tried to take away? It was nothing. The life I'd built without them? Everything.
There was no name card for me at the table. Just a blank space between 2 strangers and a flickering candle that didn't seem to want to stay lit. The rehearsal dinner was at a converted barn north of Camden, all twinkle lights and white hydrangeas, the kind of place people rent for Instagram, not memory. I stood there a few seconds longer than I needed to, waiting for anyone to notice the mistake. But no one did. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne flutes. I shook my head. Behind me, Sophia laughed sharp and loud at something their cousin Brian said. Michael stood next to her, nodding, smiling the way grooms are supposed to. Liam tugged gently on my sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "are we at the wrong table?" I crouched beside him, smoothing down his collar. "No, baby, this is just one of those adult things." He looked up at me with those clear green eyes, his dad's eyes, and I felt something twist in my chest. I kissed the top of his head and guided him to his seat. I sat down, folded my napkin into my lap, and waited. No one came. They hadn't saved me a seat at the family table. They hadn't saved me anything. 10 minutes later, Sophia clinked her glass for attention. "Thank you all for being here," she said, eyes glinting under the string lights. "It means the world to have our people around us." She didn't look at me. Not once. Elenina, my mother, sat beside her perfectly dressed, her wine glass, raised like a queen, presiding over her court. "Here's to the bride and groom," she said, "and to a perfect start." It didn't matter that I had designed the seating chart, that I'd confirmed the caterers, that I'd rewritten the program booklet 3 times because someone didn't like the font. Apparently, I wasn't one of their people. Across the room, someone started a toast about childhood memories and marshmallows and fireflies in jars. The stories all included Sophia, not me. I kept my back straight, my smile calm, my hand resting lightly on Liam's shoulder. But I couldn't stop wondering if I wasn't invited to their table. Was I ever really part of the family? There was a summer when Sophia broke her wrist falling off a horse at Camp Laurelwood. I was 19, home from college, and gave up my paid internship to drive her to physical therapy 3 times a week. She doesn't remember that. She remembers that Mom brought her balloons. There was a fall when Dad had his first heart scare. I was the one who stayed through the night in that blue vinyl chair in ICU, while Mom left early for a charity gala and Sophia texted from a date. I brought his slippers. I held the phone to his ear so he could listen to the Red Sox game when he couldn't open his eyes. At his funeral 3 years later, Sophia sobbed loudest. She got the front row and the microphone. I got to keep the funeral bill. I used to think if I just kept showing up, someone would notice. That loyalty earned space. But the thing about being the reliable one, the one who says it's fine and picks up the pieces, is eventually they start thinking you don't feel it when something breaks. After Liam was born, things got quiet. His father had already drifted long before the due date. I named him after Dad gave up the bigger job in Boston and moved back to Camden so Mom wouldn't have to travel to see her grandson. She visited once, brought a hand-me-down toy piano with a key missing, and said she had brunch plans at the club. When Sophia crashed her car during that ugly breakup with Connor, the guy with the boat and the temper, I was the one she called. Midnight, rain, no shoes. I wrapped her in one of Liam's blankets, let her sleep on our couch, made tea. She never said thank you. The next day, she asked if I could keep it quiet from Mom. I did. She still introduces me as my older sister. She's practical, good with numbers. Not once has she told anyone that I saved her. Not once has she said my name when it mattered. And when she handed me the wedding binder 3 months ago and said, "You're good at this stuff, right?" I said yes. Of course I said yes, because part of me still believed if I made this day perfect for her, I might earn my place back. That's the part of me I hate the most. But maybe the cruelest part wasn't that she forgot. It's that the first person to erase me was the one I stayed up all night protecting. I was in Elenina's study, cross-checking the guest list against the catering head count when I saw it. There. Under acknowledgments on the back of the program, thanks to everyone who made this day special, our incredible vendors, the wedding party, and most of all, our families, Sophia's bridesmaids and Michael's groomsmen for their love and support. No mention of me, not as a sister, not as the person who booked those vendors, not as the one who caught the florist's mistake before the lilies were ruined. My name wasn't there, not even in the smallest print. I held the program between my fingers a little longer than necessary, as if maybe it would change. It didn't. I closed the binder gently. I didn't ask. I didn't say a word. Later that day, Sophia posted a carousel of behind-the-scenes shots from her bridal shower group photos, cake-cutting peonies in soft focus. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't in any of them, even the one I remember standing in. I'd taken the picture for her, handed the phone to one of the caterers to get a wider shot. She'd cropped me out. It was around then that I noticed something else. The family group chat had gone quiet for me. Invitations sent without my name. Updates about fittings menus, music, all shared, all discussed, but I wasn't included. It wasn't a confrontation. It was quieter than that, a gentle push to the margins, a series of omissions that taken together became undeniable. I was being edited out of the story in real time. That night, as I folded Liam's laundry, he came in holding one of his drawings. "Made this for your desk," he said. It was a simple sketch, 3 stars floating in a dark sky. One was smaller, set off to the side, a little wobbly. "That one's you," he added, pointing. "The one that's still glowing." I swallowed hard. "Why's mine way over there?" He shrugged. "Dunno. It just looked more peaceful." I held his picture long after he went to bed, because he didn't know. He didn't know that hours earlier I watched my name disappear and didn't fight it. I stopped correcting their mistakes. When the DJ's contract had the wrong date, I let Sophia find out on her own. When the bakery called to confirm lemon instead of lavender, I didn't reply. And when Michael texted asking if I could double-check the seating chart one more time, I stared at the message for a full minute before closing it. Seen. Not answered. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. I just stopped. Stopped showing up early. Stopped staying late. Stopped offering suggestions they never listened to. I still came to the fittings, still nodded through conversations, but I was no longer inside the frame. I unfollowed the wedding account Sophia had made. Deleted the shared Google Drive link. I posted a single photo to my story, Liam's drawing taped to my office wall. The 3 stars. No caption. Then I locked the account. At the next family gathering, I arrived exactly on time, not a minute earlier. I brought Liam, said hello, and took the seat closest to the door. When asked if I'd brought the monogrammed welcome bags, I smiled and said, "No one asked me to. No one knew what to say." That night, Liam asked, "Are we still going to the rehearsal brunch tomorrow?" "I don't think we're on the list," I said gently. He was quiet for a moment, then climbed into my lap. "That's okay. We're not missing anything important, right?" I pressed my lips to his temple. "Not a thing. In a family like mine, disappearance doesn't happen all at once. It's not a slammed door. It's a door left ajar, then slowly closed while no one's looking. No accusations. No goodbyes. Just a quiet subtraction. And in that silence, something finally settled inside me. Maybe I didn't belong at their table anymore. But I also didn't have to beg for a seat. The wedding was held at St. Thomas Episcopal Church just off Main Street, a building with white columns and stained glass that caught the afternoon light like something holy. Liam and I arrived early as instructed. I wore a pale blue dress, simple-pressed, respectful. He held my hand in his little suit and tie and told me I looked beautiful. "Thanks, buddy," I whispered. "That means everything." In the bridal suite, Sophia was surrounded by her bridesmaids, all in matching robes, all talking at once. I stood off to the side, holding a tray of boutonnieres, waiting for someone to notice I was there. She barely looked at me. Mom did, though. "That dress," she said with a tight smile. "Very you." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The ceremony itself was flawless white roses lining the pews, candlelight flickering like memory music, swelling at just the right moments. I walked down the aisle ahead of Sophia, bouquet in hand, head high. Not for her, for myself. For Liam, who sat in the front row smiling with quiet pride. After the vows, after the photos, after the toasts had begun, the reception moved to the ballroom at the Camden Opera House. Chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters floated. Everything looked like a magazine. Then Sophia took the microphone. "I just want to say a few words," she beamed, glass in hand. "First, to my incredible maid of honor, my sister Orly." I smiled, surprised. Guests clapped politely. Sophia's smile tightened. "Orly's a single mom, raising a kid alone. So brave, right? Still showing up even when no one's ever really loved her properly." Laughter soft and confused. "She's still on the market, by the way," Sophia added, smirking. "Anyone looking to adopt?" A few chuckles scattered like broken glass. I didn't move. My fingers curled around the edge of the table. Liam beside me gripped my hand tightly. Mom stood and raised her glass. "Our Orly has always been the quiet one, practical. A little dull, maybe, but even secondhand goods can have value, with the right packaging." More laughter now, louder. Something in me cracked, but I didn't show it. I stood up ready to walk out, not in shame, just to protect my son from hearing another word. Then I heard it, a chair scraping sharply across the floor. Michael. He stood at the head table, face flushed, jaw set, walked up to Sophia, took the microphone from her hand. "I need to say something." Sophia laughed, nervous. "Michael, what are you doing?" He held up one hand. "Let me finish." The room stilled. This day was supposed to be about love, about family. And yet, what I just heard was cruelty. Shallow. Vicious. And I won't be part of it. He turned to face the guests. "Orly and I didn't meet last month. We met 12 years ago in a hospital where my sister Emily was dying of leukemia. She was 16. Orly was a volunteer. She read to Emily, sat with her, sang to her. She brought her son, just 5 at the time, who drew pictures of planets and stars and left them at her bedside. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily used to say Orly was the only person who treated her like she was still living, not dying. He looked at me now, eyes soft but firm. I never forgot, and I'll never forgive what I heard tonight. "Sophia, I'm calling off this wedding." A hush, then a glass shattered somewhere. Mom stood pale and furious. "Michael, you don't know what you're doing." He looked at her cold. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm walking away from this to protect what actually matters." He crossed the room, stopped beside Liam, knelt. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being the light you are." Then he turned to me, held out his hand. I took it. Not because I needed saving, but because someone had finally said it out loud that I had been there all along and they just chose not to see me. It took less than 48 hours for the calls to start. Elenina was first. She didn't ask if I was all right. She didn't ask about Liam. She went straight to the point. Sophia hasn't left her apartment. She said, her voice tight. She's humiliated. And Michael, well, he'll regret it. But you just stood there and let it happen. I said nothing. She was your sister, she snapped. You couldn't stop him. I didn't ask him to, I replied, and I certainly didn't make him lie. There was a silence on the line. Then a bitter laugh. Always the victim, she said. You made this about you as always. I hung up before she finished. 2 days later, Hannah, one of the bridesmaids, called, the only one who'd ever tried to include me in anything. She brought over tea once when I had the flu. She remembered Liam's birthday. I just wanted to check in, she said, cautious. Sophia's still a mess. I'm sure she is. Hannah hesitated. She keeps saying you planned this. That Michael, he only called off the wedding because you turned him against her. I didn't answer. Look, she added, voice lowering. I'm not saying she was right. What she said at the reception was awful, but maybe it's better to just let it go. You've got your son, your life. What's the point in stirring it all up again? There it was, not apology, not understanding, just the hope that I would go back to being quiet so they didn't have to feel uncomfortable. That same afternoon, I saw that Elenina had left a voicemail. I think we all said things we didn't mean, she said. Let's be adults about this. Family is still family. No mention of what those things were. No ownership. Just the suggestion that time should do the work that remorse refused to. I didn't call back. They weren't looking for reconciliation. They were looking for cleanup, damage control, someone to help them carry the consequences of their own actions quietly without asking for accountability. But I'd done enough carrying. I didn't owe them silence anymore, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them to rewrite what happened. Thanksgiving came and went without an invitation. Christmas cards arrived in the mail from distant cousins, but not from Elenina, not from Sophia. And I didn't send any in return, not out of spite, just stillness. There were no more calls, no follow-ups, no forced gatherings. It was as if my silence had drawn a line so clear. No one dared to cross it, not even to pretend things were normal. One afternoon in February, I ran into Brian, our cousin, at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable fumbling with his cart, pretending to be surprised to see me. I heard about the wedding, he said finally. That was something. I waited. He shifted his weight. I mean, Sophia shouldn't have said those things. But you know, emotions were high. Family gets messy. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. No, I said quietly. Family gets cruel when cruelty is tolerated. He didn't say anything else, just nodded and turned down the bread aisle. Later that week, Liam asked if we were going to Nana's for Easter. I looked at him carefully. Do you want to? He thought about it, then shook his head. They don't really see us there. I smiled, brushed his hair back. That's okay. We see each other. And that was enough. I didn't need a seat at their table. I wasn't waiting to be forgiven or remembered or invited back into the role they'd written for me. The next time someone brought up that night, I didn't explain. I didn't retell. I just said one sentence. I was there. They just lived easier pretending I wasn't. And no one dared to argue. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted in patches, leaving behind damp earth and small, stubborn flowers. One Saturday, Liam asked if we could visit Emily's grave. We brought daisies from the farmer's market and a small drawing he'd made that morning. It was a recreation of his old picture, 3 stars in a night sky. But this time they weren't scattered. This time the smaller star was nestled between the others. Still glowing. Still quiet. But not alone. He knelt in the grass, smoothing the paper beside the headstone. I think she'd like this one better, he said. Michael stood a few steps away, hands in his pockets, head bowed. He'd met us there like he always did when it mattered. Not to say something. Just to be. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The breeze lifted the edge of the paper. The sun caught the corner of a laminated photo tucked behind the stone one I hadn't seen in years. It was me sitting in the hospital chair holding Emily's hand, Liam asleep on my lap. Someone had printed it, protected it in plastic, tucked it there where memory doesn't fade. I didn't cry. I just stood a little longer than I had to. Then I placed one final thing beside the drawing, a folded page from Sophia's wedding program. My name had never been on it. Now it rested here where it mattered. Not to be remembered, just to remind them I had been part of the story all along. If you've ever been quietly erased and chose not to explain why you stopped showing up, just leave one word they never gave you. Mom didn't cry. She didn't slam the phone. She didn't even ask why. She just said, "A backyard." Really, Julia, that's not a real wedding. That's a garden party for poor people. Then she hung up. That was the moment I knew she wouldn't come. Not because she was sick, not because the date didn't work, not even because of some family emergency. She wouldn't come because my wedding in her eyes wasn't worth showing up for. It wasn't big enough. It wasn't showy enough. It didn't offer her a stage. I sat on our porch for a long time after that call the old wood pressing into the backs of my thighs, the winter air cutting through my sweatshirt. My fingers held the phone like it might still ring, like she might call back and say it was a joke or that she didn't mean it. But the silence just settled in dense and immovable. Malik came out eventually carrying 2 mugs of tea. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He just handed me the mug and sat beside me, letting the steam rise between us like a curtain of quiet understanding. "She said no," I finally murmured. He nodded. Because it's in the backyard, I managed a small, bitter laugh. Because it's not a ballroom, no chandeliers, no monogrammed napkins, no plated beef tenderloin with wine pairings. It doesn't match what she pictured when she imagined the day her daughter got married. She imagined herself in it, he said after a pause. That landed. It wasn't about me. It never was. Mom didn't ask about the lighting design I spent 6 months building from scratch, recycled glass bottles and hundreds of tiny LED bulbs I wired by hand. She didn't ask about the way we turned our backyard into a lantern-lit grove, how we dug and replanted the wildflower beds ourselves. She didn't ask why we were limiting it to 25 guests or what it meant to us to share vows where we built our life, not some place rented by the hour. She only asked once weeks earlier with a scoff. "You're not doing it potluck style, are you?" She didn't wait for an answer. It's strange, isn't it? The way some people shrink a wedding down to its optics. My mother didn't care who I was marrying. She cared what people would say, what they'd wear, what kind of photos would show up on Facebook. She didn't want to be part of my wedding. She wanted to be seen. I gave her an invitation anyway, printed not emailed, embossed lavender-scented, tied with silk thread. No RSVP ever came. The morning it arrived, she texted me only once. "Looks like something a homeschooler made." I almost laughed. She'd probably forgotten I was homeschooled for 3 years at her request. What do you do when the person who raised you tells you without screaming, without cursing, that your life doesn't measure up? What do you do when your mother decides your most meaningful day isn't even worth an Uber ride? You grieve. Then you keep going. You hang the lights, you press your dress, you rewrite your vows, and you record everything. The space where I used to exist in my mother's world had always been conditional. I was the second daughter, the quieter one. The one who wore her sister's hand-me-downs and never once asked why the family photo albums had entire pages without me in them. At Rachel's wedding, the big one, the one Mom still brags about to anyone with a book club or a holiday newsletter, I wasn't a bridesmaid. I wasn't even seated with the family. I was stationed behind the floral archway holding a clipboard and a walkie-talkie, making sure the buffet didn't run out of crab cakes and that the violinist didn't start too early. I remember the shoes I wore that day, cheap flats from a clearance bin, blisters by the first dance. I remember Rachel's dress, hand-beaded imported silk, cost more than my college tuition, and how Mom adjusted the train just before the ceremony, tears in her eyes, like she was crowning royalty. "You'll get your turn," she whispered when I tried to step into the room for a photo. My turn never came. What I got instead were tasks. Carry this, check that, be useful. Don't be in the way. The only picture I appear in from that entire wedding weekend is a blurry side profile shot where I'm wiping down the cake table in the background. Someone once tagged me in it and called me the help. I laughed. I didn't correct them. By then, I'd learned my place. So when I told Mom I was planning something small, intimate outdoors, no bridal party, no speeches, just vows and shared bread, she blinked. Small, she repeated like I'd said illegal. She pursed her lips. That's disappointing, Julia. Don't you want something people will remember? I wanted something I would remember. I wanted the people I loved, the man I'd chosen. Music under open sky. Plates passed hand to hand instead of cold chicken delivered by servers with name tags. I didn't need chandeliers. I didn't need a $10,000 cake. But Mom's face told me I'd already failed, that my choices embarrassed her, that not the wedding, not the scale, but I was too small. Rachel called a week later. I thought maybe she was reaching out trying to bridge the growing silence. Instead, she said Mom's worried you're having some kind of breakdown. She says you're sabotaging your own wedding because you're afraid to be the center of attention. I let her talk. I said thank you. I hung up. They didn't understand. They never had. What I was doing wasn't sabotage. It was reclamation. This wedding this day wasn't a stage for my mother. It wasn't a family PR moment. It wasn't a parade for second cousins I hadn't seen since middle school. It was mine. And I wasn't going to plan it like I was asking permission. The morning of my wedding, the sky was gray, but it wasn't threatening. It was the kind of gray that made colors stand out sharper, the kind that turns every flower into a brushstroke. I stood barefoot on the back porch, staring at the rows of mismatched chairs we'd borrowed from neighbors, each tied with scraps of dyed ribbon. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at the paper lanterns we'd strung between the trees. They danced in silence. Inside, Claire was steaming my dress, a soft cream gown, simple with pockets. She'd sewn it herself, every seam a small act of love. Malik's cousin was setting out place cards on the long wooden table. No calligraphy, no gold embossing. Just names printed on seeded paper so each guest could take theirs home and plant something. I walked through the space, slowly touching each chair, each glass jar filled with herbs and field flowers. These weren't placeholders. These were decisions, intentions. Every detail had a reason, and every reason was love. No bridal suite, no makeup team. Just my bathroom mirror and my hands. I twisted my hair up into a loose knot, stuck 2 gardenias behind my ear. When I stepped into the dress, it felt like armor, not to defend myself, but to hold myself together. Claire caught my eye in the reflection. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think so." She came behind me, adjusted a loose strap. "You look like yourself." I've never felt more like myself. At 4:12 p.m., the ceremony began. No prelude. Just birdsong wind, the creak of the gate as the guests entered quietly, respectfully, like stepping into a memory being made in real time. Malik stood at the end of the aisle, which was just the garden path, wearing a navy suit and a crooked smile. His hands shook when he saw me. Mine did too. We didn't have an officiant. We didn't read from a script. We spoke to each other, not to the audience. I don't remember exactly what we said, but I remember what it felt like standing still for the first time in years, like being heard by someone who wasn't waiting for their turn to speak. After we kissed, everyone clapped, not politely, but wholeheartedly. My favorite sound. Dinner was served from giant enamel pots, family style. No servers, no plated service. Just bowls passed down the table, laughter echoing off the ivy-covered fence, someone humming along to a Van Morrison song playing through a borrowed speaker. When night fell, the lights came on, all those hours of wiring and careful placement, and the whole yard glowed like a firefly had taken up residence in each tree. Claire leaned over at one point and whispered, "This looks like a film set." But it didn't. It looked like home. And I knew, even as I laughed and drank and danced barefoot under those lights, that the people who were missing wouldn't see this. Not in real time, not in color, not in context. They wouldn't see the way Malik looked at me during our first dance. They wouldn't hear the toasts from people who actually knew us. They wouldn't taste the lavender lemonade or the fig cake or smell the rosemary smoke from the grill. They'd just see pictures, and by then it would be too late. We hadn't planned to post anything, not right away at least. Our friend Devin, a filmmaker, not a wedding videographer, had offered to document the day as a gift. She shot it like a memory. No wide, sweeping drone shots, no slow-motion veil toss. Just us as we were setting tables, fixing hair-holding hands under string lights. 2 weeks after the wedding, she sent over a short film, 90 seconds long. No narration, no captions. Just music, soft and slow. It began with Malik wiping his palms on his pants before the ceremony, then cut to me tying a ribbon around a jar of wildflowers. The final shot was of us dancing barefoot on the flagstones with the paper lanterns swaying above like stars pretending to be close. It made me cry. I watched it 3 times alone in our living room before calling Malik in. He didn't speak while it played. When it ended, he took a long breath and said, "She made it feel like something ancient." I nodded. "Do you think it's petty if I post it?" He smiled, not unkindly. "Sometimes petty is just the truth finally told, so I posted it." Quietly. No hashtags, no captions beyond October 8th. Home. Love. And then I put my phone down and went to bed. By morning, the views had passed 20,000. By noon, it had crossed 50. By dinner, a writer from an indie design blog had messaged me, "Is this your wedding? Can we feature it in our next issue?" I blinked at the message, then reread it. I hadn't expected that. By the end of the week, we were on 2 online magazines and a viral roundup article titled, "The Most Beautiful Backyard Wedding You've Ever Seen." I didn't feel vindicated. Not exactly. I felt seen. In a way, I hadn't expected to be, not by strangers, but by people who hadn't rehearsed a version of me they liked better. And then the calls started. Rachel first. She left a voicemail that started with "wow" and ended with "so. Why didn't you tell us it was going to look like that?" Then a text from my aunt. "That wedding video is all over my feed. I didn't know it was yours. Gorgeous." Then finally my mother. No call. Just a text. One line. "Is this the wedding I wasn't invited to?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Technically, she was invited. She just never bothered to answer. The next morning, she followed up. "You made us look terrible, Julia. People keep asking why we weren't there. You could have warned us." Warned them. I read the message again. Then again. I wasn't sure what part she found most upsetting, the fact that the wedding happened without her, or the fact that it was beautiful. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about image. It had always been about image. I didn't respond to her text. Not right away. I wasn't sure what there was to say to someone who was more upset about being left out of the photos than missing the actual moment. But I did respond 3 days later after Malik watched the short film again, this time with a glass of wine in hand and a long silence after it ended. "You should let her see it," he said softly. "Not because she deserves it, but because she clearly doesn't understand what she missed." So I sent a message. "If you want to understand what really happened, come to the studio on Friday at 3. You can watch the full footage. Nothing edited." She wrote back 2 hours later. Fine. She arrived 10 minutes late. Wore pearls. Of course she did. Walked into the little documentary studio like she was touring a charity she might donate to. Polite, cool, detached. I didn't offer small talk. I didn't hug her. Devin had set up the screening room for us, just 2 chairs, a small monitor, and silence. The lights dimmed. I hit play. For the first 5 minutes, she sat with her arms folded. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, waiting for the scoff, the snort, the condescending chuckle. It never came. There was no narrator in the video, no music, just real sound footsteps on gravel glasses clinking, someone laughing from the back row. My voice shaking as I read vows. Malik stumbling over his own. The catch in his throat when he said, "You make me feel like I came home." At minute 12, she shifted. At minute 18, she blinked hard. At minute 20, when the screen showed us dancing under the lights, lanterns glowing like warm planets overhead, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. When the footage ended, I paused the screen. Just a still image of the yard, empty chairs, candle stubs. She didn't speak for a long time. Then it looked expensive. I waited. She cleared her throat. "And you didn't mention it would be like that." I turned to her, my voice steady. "Would it have mattered?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "I invited you," I said. "You declined." "You didn't make it clear." I cut her off. I wasn't auditioning for your approval, Mom. I was getting married. She looked away. I didn't feel the silence. When she finally met my eyes, her voice was sharper, defensive. You made us look like we didn't care. I tilted my head. Did you? She flinched, a small, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of her mouth. But she didn't answer. I stood, walked to the door, opened it. Thanks for coming. She lingered, half standing, then sat back down just for a second. I didn't know it would be beautiful, she said. That's the point, I replied quietly. You didn't care to find out. She didn't hug me as she left. I didn't expect her to. But as the door clicked shut behind her, I felt something shift. Not closure, not healing, just clarity. I didn't hear from her for a while after that. No follow-up call, no long text, no backpedaling wrapped in half-hearted apologies. Just silence, which strangely felt more honest than anything else we'd exchanged in years. I didn't go to Thanksgiving, didn't get an invitation for Christmas. No one said I was cut off, but no one reached out either. It was a quiet exile, the kind that starts as distance and settles into erasure, and I was fine. Not in the triumphant movie ending way, but in the slow grounded way, in the way you realize you don't have to keep chasing a door that never opens. Instead, I poured myself into work, into Malik, into our life. The wedding film, the full version, was picked up by an arts collective in Seattle. They screened it in a gallery show titled Intimate Architecture. We flew up for the opening. People cried watching it. A couple asked if we were actors. I told them no. Just a woman who got married in her backyard because that was where her life had truly begun. 6 months passed. One afternoon, I came home to a small package on our porch. No return address. Just my name in careful cursive I recognized instantly. Inside was a photo. Rachel's wedding. One I'd never seen. I was in the background holding a tray of champagne flutes, my face turned slightly, eyes focused on something just out of frame. On the back of the photo was a note. 2 lines. I looked right past you that day. I see you now. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I didn't frame it. Didn't call to say thank you. I just slid it into the back of our wedding album behind a picture of Malik spinning me under the lanterns, both of us laughing barefoot, lit from beneath by the glow of 100 tiny bulbs. That's the story I'll tell if anyone asks about our wedding. I'll tell them we did it our way. I'll tell them we planted wildflowers where people expected roses, that we fed our guests from our hands, not a caterer's checklist, that we danced on gravel and laughed under paper moons, and that we invited everyone who mattered, even the ones who didn't show up. Because in the end, a wedding isn't made by who attends. It's made by who stays. And when I look at the photos now, I don't see what's missing. I see what remained.